All right, you guys, we have an amazing first presenter up, Chef Leslie Orser, and she is going to be whipping together something I have been drooling about since I read it, a salted caramel cashew coffee cake. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
It is very yummy. We
Yeah.
made it for Christmas. We had to do the testing coming up to this, and it's all gone. I only got one piece, and I'm the only gluten-free person.
Well, if there's any left over, I think we have a few willing taste testers in the crowd, yes? Just a little heads up, in case we do forget to mention it, at the end of this, there are going to be taste testers over at the Udi's booth, so make sure you go chat to Leslie afterwards. So without further ado, do you guys have any dietary restrictions? Any allergies in the house? Shout them out. What are you guys allergic to? Celiac. Figured in this crowd, so you're at a good place, my friend. I know I have a lot of friends, they're allergic to peanuts, lactose intolerant, and you kind of feel like when you go out to eat, you have to announce yourself, you know? A celiac is coming. Well, Leslie, thank you. Leslie happens to have an aptly titled book, and this recipe, I do believe, is in the book.
The recipe is not in the book. This is a brand new recipe. Uh-oh. That's one of us too close to, or maybe you're too close to the speaker.
I'll stay put.
This is specially developed for this event using both Udi and Glutino products today.
Amazing. So it's kind of that easy kickstart
Yes.
into cooking and eating gluten-free.
That's right, and I do have some handouts later if anybody does want the recipe.
Perfect. Well, you guys, without further ado, let's put our hands together for the one and only Leslie Orser.
Woo. Thanks, guys, and welcome. As you have just heard, my name's Leslie Orser. I'll tell you a quick little background before I get cooking, but I also have celiac disease. But I went through about 20 years of misdiagnosis and finding out I had food allergies that turned out in the end I had celiac disease. So after that long period, I'd already been working with avoiding a lot of foods in our recipes. And so we'd been jotting down notes, taking our family recipes, testing them out, turning them into avoiding this allergy, avoiding that allergy. And we had this big messy binder. And when I found out I had celiac disease, to me, it was this huge freedom. I went, finally, I have the answer to everything that's been wrong with me since I was a very, very little kid, because there was a lot of indicators for a long time. But I looked healthy, grew healthy, just had these weird problems they could never understand. So that's how the book became what it is. We took our family recipes, our relatively normal, easy things to do, and converted them all to gluten-free. Sadly, we don't avoid all allergies, and today I want to make sure everyone knows there are nuts in this cake that I'm about to make. So if anyone's going to sample it later and you have a nut allergy, please don't. But everything is gluten-free. And one of my theories is to try to keep life easy. I'm an accountant, I have my own business, I have employees, I've got active clients, I've got kids. I cannot be going to the health food store and buying xanthan gum and this kind of flour and that kind of flour. Not only is it my time, but it's my money, and half the time nothing works. And you throw it out and you're upset. It's very upsetting when you keep trying things. So I turn to the professionals, and that's people like Glutino, people like Udi, who have researchers, who've got teams who are tasting these things and coming up with awesome products. And then I turn those into my home cooking. So today, that's exactly what we're doing. We're using both Udi and Glutino because they're the wonderful sponsors of today. And actually, I wanted to stop and say, you know, for all of us who have tried so hard and worked so hard to adopt a gluten-free diet, I was diagnosed 10 years ago. Fast forward to today, there are so many products that are so amazing that I frankly feel like I lead an absolutely normal life. My entire house is gluten-free. Everyone who comes over eats gluten-free. My entire family eats gluten-free, and nobody knows the difference. So hands up and a big cheer to all these people who have worked so hard to make our lives relatively normal. Once we get used to what we've got to buy, right? You have to get blinders on in the superstore and figure out what you need to buy. So I'll get on to cooking. This is a pretty easy recipe, and it turns out pretty awesome. As I said, I made it for my Christmas dinner dessert. So it was the second test round, literally all gone. And I got only one piece. And there was 10 people there, so I guess it's pretty easy for it all to go, but there was seconds. So what we're doing is a salted caramel cashew coffee cake. So the point is to be able to use readily made professional products in a home baked good. You can actually, this recipe was in a magazine and I just tweaked it by looking, well, this has already got sugar, this has already got all the different flours, takes 2 eggs, the recipe takes 2 eggs. Okay, I can use this cup for cup. I just had to figure out how much sour cream to put in there. So you can do that with almost any recipe. If you get something like the pancake mix, or you get a cake mix which has sugar, you can take normal recipes, if we'll call them normal, but non-gluten-free recipes, and you can convert them really easy by using some of these products. And I've found that pretty much every recipe works right off the go, just by substituting. And so then you don't have to look for a lot of special recipes. So what we're gonna start off with is the topping. So it's kind of a crumbly topping, and what I did is I took 5 cookies, so they're already, that's where the salted caramel cashew cookie comes from. And I crunched them all up in this bag so that they're all nice and crumbly. Now the cool thing about cookies, which we figured out a long time ago in one of the recipes in there, is you can use commercially made gluten-free cookies, especially like ginger snaps, grind them all up, and you can make your own, like a graham cracker crust. And then the rest of the cake or pie usually has no gluten in it, it's usually just the crust. So that's a really fast, easy hint to be able to do something really fast. So then we use 5 tablespoons of butter all cut up into this topping. So I've already got everything pre-measured. I wonder what I get close to that makes that happen. So what I do when I need to cut something up with a pastry cutter, I try to save a bit of time by cutting it up a little bit with my knife. Makes it go a little bit faster. And I don't quite have to use all of it. And then we just cut this all up. Can you guys see on the mirror? Cool. I didn't even realize there was a mirror. We had a little bit of a quick adaptation this morning because the oven was acting up and didn't want to light, and I suddenly had to have emergency surgery on my foot on Thursday, and I'm just like, okay, this convention center is too big. So we were a little bit tight for time, but I did manage to get a cake in the oven already, as people who were here early saw, and that's going to be our taste testers at the Udi booth, because it takes about an hour for that to cook. So I just clean off my pastry cutter once in a while so that these get into nice, light little balls. Okay, and then this also, it's something over there. I have to make sure it's half a cup of sugar. I'm using sugar in the raw. It actually has a lovely, almost vanilla kind of smell. It's very lovely. Make sure I've got everything in here. I do, and a 1/4 cup of the pancake mix. So this, you could actually use a lot of different ingredients in this topping. The recipe that I found that I adapted was actually a mix and match coffee cake. So once you have this topping, which the topping is basically a 1/4 cup of pancake mix, a little less than a 1/4 cup of butter, and then you could mix anything. There's a lot of different flavors of Udi cookies. There's chocolate chip. There's the one that we're using today with the salted caramel cashew. And they have one other one that, oh, it's coconut and peanut butter, which would be awesome too. So you can change this up. You can use the base and then do something different. And today what we're doing is we're using a dulce de leche, which is caramel sauce. Luckily you can buy it already made. The recipe handout that I have also tells you how to make it straight from sweetened condensed milk. It's a South American version of homemade caramel. So it takes sweetened condensed milk and you boil it for like 3 hours until it's caramelizing inside of the can. So it has a very delicious flavor. And the recipe that we're doing today takes the cake, puts a layer of dulce de leche, and then another layer of cake, and then the crumble. In that middle layer, again, you can take the base that we're gonna do, putting the cake together, and you can put all sorts of different things in that middle. You can put raspberry jam, you can put chocolate sauce, you can put apple sauce. So it's really a very adaptable recipe if you realize you can actually do all sorts of different things in the fillings to give it some different flavors. Okay, so we have the topping already. And you guys can feel free if you have any questions as we go along. So how many people do have celiac disease here? You do? And you do? Oh, how did it skip your parents? That's like me. I swear that everyone tells me they've gotten the test, but they really haven't. But you know, it's funny, you know, so many people feel a little upset about finding out that they have celiac disease, but if you've gone through getting very ill, or if you've gone through misdiagnosis, you know, and it just the frustration of all that and the time that you waste going for test after test after test, when you get that answer and they tell you all you have to do is change your diet. There's no medication, the rest of it's really emotional because you have to conquer the fact you don't get to eat things when you're with your friends and stuff like that. But it has gotten so much better now. Now so many restaurants have things, you can get pizza, you know, all that stuff. So it's really, I just thought that it was quite liberating to find out. Not to say that I don't go through the same thing. I'm talking because when I turn this on, it's gonna be so noisy. It's probably gonna be noisy in here too. But what I was gonna say, not that I don't also go through the same emotional things. As much as I've got it handled and I know how to eat, there's still this lifetime feeling of I can't. And it's one of the biggest things to battle with and keep going, focusing on what you can have. So I'm gonna blend now. So we just have to whip up this butter nice and soft. An exciting thing today is we can eat cake. And you won't even know the difference between something that was containing gluten. I mean, I entertain clients and I'll have 30 people in the house and everything's gluten-free and everyone's shocked. They just can't believe it. You know, one of the great things I love about Udi's is their bread products are so easy to use. They have a baguette. Has anyone tried the Udi baguette yet? Yes. I do a fast bruschetta in the summertime because we grow tomatoes and we have basil out in like right on our patio. So I can just throw these beautiful bruschettas together with the Udi baguette. It's just so amazing. And there again, people go, I can't believe this is gluten-free. It's kind of like the old parquet commercials. Go for it. Yes, and it actually works perfect. What you have to do though is you have to use one of the flour substitutes. Glutino has a flour substitute that's not a pancake mix, it's just flour. Because you can't use something that's got baking soda in it or it goes weird. It has to be a flat flour. So any of the Celiac works, because I've got, Celiac is like the oldest flour substitute. Like I like to buy the flour substitutes. If you were gonna make your own, you would do something that's rice-based and don't put baking soda in it or it goes crazy. But if you go and buy one of the, it's that. If you go and you buy one of the pre-put together, commercially prepared flour exchanges, they work perfect and they do the whole puff and down. And my girlfriend, her husband does all the cooking in the house because she's visually impaired and she's celiac. She found out probably about a year before I found out, so she's about 11 years in. And that's actually the most recent thing that they've been so thrilled that they can make is Yorkshire pudding. And he's actually gone out and bought the gigantic muffin tins so that she can have these huge ones. And I've done pierogies, homemade pasta, because there are a lot of really wonderful pastas out there, but there's no filled raviolis that are adaptable, like a meat or I guess there is that one brand that has ravioli. I shouldn't lie, there is one. They are very expensive too, but to be able to do homemade is really awesome. So I've figured out doing that, and I actually bought something very simple at, I'll try to stand away from this, Price Smart. It's, mind you, I think they've all been rebranded to Save on Foods, There's a flour, it's made in India, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but you see it, it says gluten-free, and it comes in this gigantic bag, and it's rice flours, and it has a bit of chana flour, the chickpea flour, and I actually experimented using that making pasta, and it works perfect. And I got my grandmother's recipe for pierogies, and I just used not the pancake mix, but one of the flour mixes, cup for cup, using Baba's recipe, and it works just perfect. The trick is when you go to make your own pastas or pastries, and Glutino has an awesome pastry mix that's just to die for. It works out perfect. Is you put plastic wrap on your counter and plastic wrap on top, and then you don't have the problem of it sticking, and you want to poke your eye out with a fork after it because it just doesn't work, right? But if you use plastic wrap, I did a whole bunch of hors d'oeuvres over the Christmas holidays using the Glutino pastry mix, and they were just awesome. Like I used, actually I did spanakopita. I don't know why I had this craving for spanakopita. And that's really how everything comes about. I go, I want X. And one winter it was all Chinese food, and so I figured that out. And this winter I wanted spanakopita. So again, the recipe calls for nothing that has gluten in it except for the crust. So all I did is I got the Glutino pastry mix, and it makes 2 whole pies. So it's like, it makes a lot when you're making hors d'oeuvres. So all I did is roll it out, and I used a cup and pop little circles, pop those into a muffin tin, and put the spanakopita mix in them. They were to die for. They turned out awesome. And how easy is that too, right? When we have the convenience of what anyone else would have, to be able to dump a mix in, and all you do is add, I think that mix has eggs and vinegar in it. That's it. It's very, very simple, and it just works so great. So I was hoping that this would get a little bit creamier. So what I'm going to do is add the sour cream now. Eventually all these little butter lumps all get all blended in. So we do 3/4 of a cup of sour cream. Now this is what makes it a coffee cake, because coffee cake's got to have that taste of sour cream in it. And this was the only trick I had to really work at adapting this recipe, is how much sour cream is actually going to work and not make it too mushy. And the wonderful thing about using sour cream in a gluten-free recipe is most gluten-free things tend to come out a bit dry. Just a fact, no matter how good of a cook you are. So if you use a bit of sour cream, it actually gives it this just lovely, nice, moist texture. And a bit of denseness too, so it gives you a nice filling cake. I should actually check on the one that's baking and make sure that it is baking. I'd love to know what I'm getting too close to over there. It is baking. Gotta get the smell going. Okay, so I'm gonna blend this all up. So the basic thing is, in the very beginning, try to get this mixture as smooth as you can. Get all the butter lumps all mixed in. And we're almost done. We're almost at assembly. And make sure when I'm talking that I've got everything in. I need a cake mix, butter, eggs. I put the eggs in, vanilla, cinnamon, and sour cream. Okay, so we put 2 teaspoons of cinnamon in here. I use Epicure. I'm not sure if Epicure is here today, but all of their seasonings are all gluten-free, and they're made locally in Victoria. They have some really nice seasoning mixes. And what I like about them, I have a teenager, and it's really fun for her to be able to learn how to cook by using mixed seasonings already. Like throw a Greek seasoning together with chicken. How easy is that? Okay, now we're going to add the yellow cake from Glutino. So the yellow cake has already got all the sugar and the baking soda and the flour mix. So it's got all the variety of flours that if you were going to do this yourself, you would go to the bakery or go to the local health food store and find all of these things yourself and make a gluten-free flour blend. I started off doing that and I just found it so hard, and then nowadays there's so many wonderful products I just don't even bother. So this you don't want to mix up too much, so I kind of get it mixed a bit and then go on a slow. And we get a nice thick batter, because what we want to do is we want to layer this with the dulce de leche, so we have that nice caramel layer underneath there. But you also want to be able to spread a top layer on top. And you can see the butter comes up here and it lets us blend it in for the final blend. And we're done. And now there's a lot of adaptations you can do. If you have a problem with fat, you can use no-fat sour cream. You don't have to use full test. Okay, so I'm just going to prepare my pan. I already did put a little bit of butter in here. So I have a glass pan, and what I do is I take tin foil, because later on when you're trying to cool this cake, you can just go like that, and it's all clean underneath there. And I've got a bit of butter in there already, so we just have to smear the butter around so it's nice and lightly greased. And this also gives it a bit of height. This pan is a little bit narrow. The one, if anyone was watching earlier, I used a longer pan so that we could get a few more samples out of it. This one makes a taller cake, so this is the way you would make it at home. So it's got the 2 layers and a little bit of layer in between, and the crumble comes up. And this tin foil extension up the side allows you to have a bit of a higher crumble. You could even put berries in the middle. Like, you can really use your imagination for making this a layered cake. There, I think that's good. Okay, so I'm going to use about half of this batter in the bottom. I'm not going to try to use a spoon. Let's use. I'm just going to smear it around. You know what? I'm going to change gloves. I'm just about losing my hands here. These things are impossible. Okay, so we're going to smear this all on the bottom. This is the toughest part because the tin foil likes to move around, but I kind of like to smear it from center out. Once I get it out, then I can flatten it out nicely so it's a nice wide base. We have a really nice dense batter, so it spreads really nice. Okay, and then we use about 2/3 of a cup of dulce de leche and smear it on top of this. So I've just used a can. 2 cans makes 2 cakes. We'll smear this nice and evenly. Now the trick for the top layer is to use 2 spoons. I'm just going to wipe off this spoon. Reason being is because this is quite slippery. So I try to get little blobs of dough covering it without trying to smear it around too much. And then I can use my spatula to bring these blobs together for a nice layer of batter on top. I miss my little girl being little like that. There we go. See, I'm trying to get all the caramel sauce all layered over here before I start smearing it, and then I'll get a nice layer in underneath. Okay, now I'm going to try and spread this nicely so we get a second layer of cake. And we keep the integrity of that caramel by itself in its own little layer, so when you slice it, you'll get nice caramel in there.
Now, what do you think, Leslie? Should we take a few questions while you're finishing up the cake?
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions in the
I went
audience?
silent in concentration here. There, we're all done actually. You remember the topping? All we do is sprinkle that on top, and you bake it at 350 for about an hour and 10 minutes. You had perfect timing.
Thank you very much. Pride myself on that, but I was actually coming up for a selfish reason. I do have a question actually.
Yes.
For you. Because for myself, I'm not celiac, but I have a bunch of friends who are. And one thing, if you are baking from scratch, do you have any tips? Something to help us all avoid a bit of a blunder?
Well, yeah, the first tip is you buy the professional stuff because they've got to label it gluten-free. They've got to test it already. But things like actually even coming here, right in my house, I'm celiac. I have the confidence in certain products that I buy. I was buying some unusual products to be able to come here, and it's for the public, so you have to be a little extra careful. So what you can do is when you're going through the grocery store, tip, use your phone and say, does Eagle brand dulce de leche sauce contain gluten? And you'll get it right there. And then you can have some real confidence that the ingredients, other ingredients where hidden things could be, are not. That would be one of my biggest tips, is to really watch, because sometimes there's gluten in the weirdest things. Like soy sauce is one of those things that and of course I address that in the book because that was one of my first shockers. I thought I knew so much, and then I found out soy sauce. What? You know, it was just one of those givens. And someone had made me something, think, oh, it just has soy sauce, and went, oh, let me look at your bottle, right? So just look at everything, and the wonderful thing now is the food labeling laws have changed. So just look for gluten-free at the bottom. Don't go crazy trying to read every single ingredient, because you can be confident if it says gluten-free, or if it says contains wheat, it sure does, so put it right back.
So are you guys feeling a little more confident baking gluten-free? Yes, let's have a little cheer. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, guys.
There we go, you guys. Everybody put your hands together for Leslie Orser.